No emperor patronised the arts to the extent that Hadrian did. One form of Roman art was depictions of the reigning emperor, and the most notable surviving examples of these depictions occur in sculpture and coinage. These depictions display a magnificent blend of beauty and realism. It is this realism that allows us to discover fascinating clues about the health of the Emperor Hadrian, which may provide evidence regarding the cause of his final illness, deterioration, and death. The detail I wish to draw your attention to in this video is the diagonal crease present on Hadrian's earlobe. As can be seen by these images and the accompanying close-ups, this feature is clear in both marble and bronze sculpture, and the viewer will be able to find further examples that are not included in this video. We know that this feature is not present on other Roman imperial busts. This means it is likely to be uniquely associated with Hadrian's actual appearance rather than an artistic choice. Furthermore, there are traces of this feature on a few examples of Hadrian's gold coinage. The feature is not clear in this medium, and I leave it up to the viewer to decide whether it was intentionally engraved, for it is possible that it is damage or an artifact from manufacture. You may be aware of people who possess earlobe creases like Hadrian. However, this feature may not be a benign visual quirk. In 1973, Dr. Sanders T. Frank suggested that these earlobe creases may be associated with premature cardiovascular disease in those aged 40 to 60 and recommended further testing of this hypothesis. As a result, the bilateral diagonal earlobe crease is known as Frank's sign. As of today, the link between Frank's sign and disease is still being investigated. Subsequently, there are many papers dedicated to Frank's sign that the viewer can peruse at their leisure. The selections I have chosen to show on screen are taken from a 2022 review of the implications of Frank's sign by Stoyanov and his co-authors. This review communicates that there are associations between Frank's sign and various cardiovascular problems, particularly high blood pressure and the buildup of fats and cholesterol in the arteries. The paper comments on other associations that are less established, such as metabolic issues and diseases of the lung and kidney. Now we have seen the potential clinical implications of this feature of Hadrian's appearance. Let's compare it to the testimony of the literary sources. Cassius Dio, writing at the beginning of the 3rd century, offers us the most detailed account of Hadrian's health at the end of his life. The following excerpts are taken from the Epitome of Book 69. Quote, "He now began to be sick, for he had been subject even before this to a flow of blood from the nostrils, and at this time it became distinctly more copious." End quote. Quote, "Hadrian became consumptive as a result of his great loss of blood, and this led to dropsy." End quote. Quote, "By certain charms and magic rites, Hadrian would be relieved for a time of his dropsy, but would soon be filled with water again, since, therefore, he was constantly growing worse and might be said to be dying day by day. He began to long for death, and often he would ask for poison or a sword, but no one would give them to him." End quote. Dropsy refers to a swelling caused by a buildup of fluid in the body's tissues due to poor circulation. This is a typical sign of cardiovascular problems. Furthermore, the consumption or rapid weight loss that Dio refers to is sometimes implicated in cardiovascular disease. Dio also tells us that Hadrian died at 62 years of age. This is not an uncommon age to be affected by cardiovascular problems, nor is it atypical to die from them at this stage of one's life. In 1980, 7 years after Dr. Sanders' suggestion, Dr. Nicholas Petrakis was the first to publish the connection between Hadrian's death and Frank's sign. He reports that this was due to a chance observation that occurred while looking at Hadrianic sculpture in the National Museum of Athens. Dr. Petrakis then drew upon the quoted evidence from Cassius Dio and also suggested that the reported nosebleeds could be linked to hypertension that could progress to heart failure. Dr. Petrakis also tentatively suggested that Hadrian's Type A personality was also indicative of cardiovascular problems. A Type A personality is defined as competitive, achievement and deadline orientated, involved in multiple high-effort activities simultaneously, and impatient with slowness in others. This certainly fits the perception of Hadrian one acquires from reading the literary sources. However, the link between cardiovascular problems and Type A personality is now considered controversial. To offer a dissenting opinion, a beautiful article by Dr. Hammond and his colleagues calls into question the evidence for the link between nosebleeds and high blood pressure and questions the diagnostic efficacy of Frank's sign. As a result, Dr. Hammond and colleagues propose some alternative diagnoses for Hadrian, such as head and neck cancer, liver failure, and hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. Hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia, or HHT, is a disease characterized by the incorrect formation of blood vessels, leading to recurrent nosebleeds, broken blood vessels on the skin surface, and high output heart failure. HHT would neatly explain the dropsy indicative of heart failure and the worsening nosebleeds. On the other hand, the paper does point out that the absence of reports of Hadrian's relatives presenting with this hereditary disease, and no mention of the characteristic changes to the skin's appearance, leave ample room for doubt. So in conclusion, what do we know? Not much, it seems, with any certainty. I would love to be able to sell you an easily digestible narrative about this odd feature in Hadrianic art. However, it appears to me that all we can say for certain is that Hadrian presented with Frank's sign, and that this feature of his appearance is potentially predictive of health problems, particularly those affecting the cardiovascular system. In my judgment, the account from Cassius Dio is unsatisfactory as evidence for Hadrian's condition, as it does not provide enough information for us to make a diagnosis with any certainty. From the investigations that have occurred in this video, all that can be produced are some plausible conjectures.